Hello, honeydews, and welcome back to Sippin N Bitchin. We are on episode 6, part 5. I almost held up 10 fingers. That would have not been good. Anyways, episode 6, part 5. We're your main bitches. I'm Sam.
And I'm Steph. We really couldn't have packed this into 4 parts, fortunately. And so here we are.
Okay. Some people don't have faith that we'll even be able to only do 5 parts, so we'll see.
That's disrespectful, but we only have 9 chapters, all the last 9 chapters of this book. And then I believe we decided we're gonna switch back to Cass and Poppy's storyline so that in time for the new release, we'll be back to Nyctos and Sarah's POV.
Yes.
And I think I decided, which I didn't tell Sam, so we're telling her now. I think I want to put a schedule up of like when we released each episode so that y'all can like go back and figure it out.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And also there will be
like
no
a week
episode next week because you're
oh yeah
this weekend.
yeah we're doing too much. Fun fact, my birthday and anniversary is coming up. And so me and my husband are going on a little vacay prior. So us trying to schedule to record has been a little wonky. So, yeah, no
you guys
episode
get a
next
break
week.
from us for a week. You're welcome.
Which really means you can catch up on all 6 episodes and their various parts. I love that I can say 6 episodes, but each one has probably at least 2 to 3 parts, if not 4. And this one has 5. But anyway, I digress. Chapter 38. Last time we talked, Vessis decided to show up and be her bitch ass self. And then toward the end of this whole interaction of her, you know, wreaking havoc, Belle shows up. So we're jumping into chapter 38, where Vessis notices Belle's bad bitchness, aka her eyes, and you know that she's ascended, and you know the whole tea that they've been hiding Belle for. Now they have, you know, now she knows. I really don't like Vessis, but no one's shocked.
I was about to say, does anyone?
No one does. But essentially Vessis is like, I'm not here for you, Belle, like fuck off. And Belle is like, Sarah is Nyctos's consort, and Reaver is Nectus's Draken, and Vessis is like, does it look like I care? And I'm like, girl, you should. Like, that's a little disrespectful.
This is the whole reason why we did the whole consort thing, bitch. Like,
honestly. And Sarah comes in and is just like, Reaver's hurt really bad. And Sarah's just like, he's a child. And Vessis is like, so he shouldn't have come at me. And Belle's like, Vessis, you're a bitch. That's not what she says, but in my head. But Belle's
you
like,
wanted to say,
honestly. And then Belle's like, are you that weak that you saw a youngling as a threat? And Vessis is like, not a threat, a disrespect. And honestly, she can go fuck herself. Sarah being Sarah, she heals Reaver, which she's honestly, I think she's at a point now, like, she doesn't care about people feeling it, any consequences. She's just like, I'm doing this. I love Reaver. And honestly,
mood.
So do we.
Yep. Listen, we already lost Hector. We don't need to lose more people, okay?
Why'd you have why? Why?
You're welcome.
Why, Samantha? You did not.
I just felt it was early enough. We needed all the emotions. So there you go.
Anyway, moving on. I'm ignoring Samantha's comment. Anyway, so then Vessis and Sarah go back and forth. And then we learn that Vessis was the one who sent the shades to distract Nyctos, and bunch of magical wombo combo fighting situation. And then of course Nyctos shows up. And Nyctos blasts her with energy and essentially fucks her up. And Sarah's like, she didn't want to tell Collis she wanted to kill me when she realized what I could do. But then she was like, that doesn't make sense, right? But she was afraid when she realized what I could do. And then she was making sure everyone's okay because Sarah doesn't know how to just prioritize her own self, which, mood.
Yeah, Vessis was pretty freaked out when she saw her heal Reaver. Like,
We love a strong, bad bitch.
mm-hmm.
But they are going to hold her captive and like she can go away, honestly. I know that that's not what happens, but anyway. Then Sarah feeds from Nyctos.
Love it.
And well, we all know what happens when feeding goes on.
Only great
And
things.
they have a discussion about wanting, and then he's all like, need. And then I was in his arms. I didn't know who moved. Wasn't sure if it was me who climbed into his embrace, him who grasped my arms, or if we both moved at once. Let's be real, it probably was the latter because they both love each other, even though he technically can't love. It's really confusing. Also,
Mm-hmm.
theory that I have, not a
Ooh.
theory that I have, but like a thought that I had. His cardio was removed, right? But
Uh-huh.
with the amount of ether in him, couldn't he like grow a new one? I don't know if grow's the right word, but couldn't one magically like
Reform.
sprout? Reform. Yeah, I don't know what the term would be.
I was
But
enjoying
in my
watching you look
head,
for a term though.
it was it was a choice. And that's my thing. 'Cause like, yeah, he had it removed, but could someone's two things. Could someone's heartmate like reform the cardia? Or alternatively, could you feel so strongly about another person, which kind of goes hand in hand with heartmates, that it
Right.
would reform a
Mm-hmm.
cardia? Not sure.
I think.
Or
Oh, keep going. Yep.
the fates will get involved and they'll be like, new destiny. Here's like, or they'll win the battle or some shit, and it'll be like, here's your cardia back. I don't know. It
Well,
was giving Hercules. That's where my brain just went.
I know we're not going to the next book next, but it kind of shows that he can love in the next book.
I
But
know.
I think what it is that they've made it so clear that love is the one thing they can't control or is more powerful than like even the fates, that I just think it shows that you can remove what you think is going to help you stop love, but love is just that powerful kind of thing that's not going to stop it. So it could have reformed.
Hmm.
I think it's just proven by them saying that love is the one thing they can't control. That it's just like, yo, you can try to take it out, but love has a mind of its own kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if necessarily you need the symbol of maybe it surpasses the quote unquote symbol that the cardia represents. But that was like a
Mm-hmm.
thought I had. Anyway, moving on to the end of this chapter. They're feeding, they're doing the feeding activities that ensue, of course. And the chapter ends with, I don't deserve this, and I sure as hell don't deserve that from you. Because he needs to feed. And well, he doesn't feel worthy. These men in these books just don't ever feel worthy of these women.
Love it, but sad at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And then we go into chapter 39 where Sarah is in his private quarters and Nyctos, minimalist king or traumatized man? The is the header of that chapter.
You're welcome.
Um, and Reaver wakes up briefly and kind of just notices Sarah's there, and she's like super invested in like him, being okay. Um, and this hurts my heart. Sorry, this hurts my heart with Reaver. Sarah is thinking heavily about like Vessis and the others and Nyctos and how he would do anything for her. And she has this thought of pressure settling in her chest as her thoughts travel to terrible places, the kind that made the embers vibrate, but not with the urge to heal and restore life, but to end it. I think that that's the duality of it. I think in terms of like life, you can't have life without death, death without life
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like I think that that's part of like the balance coming into play here. Um, and I'm assuming this is your note because I don't think I would type this, but I thought it. Um, that no matter what happens when she takes blood and reacts the way she does, she owns it. She doesn't blame the blood, which is a very good point. Like
Yeah.
I think when Poppy was feeding from Castile or when they would have their interactions that way, it was very much like a submissive kind of vibe in terms of like it was easier to blame the blood. But with
Yeah.
Sarah, it's very much like, no, these are my feelings. Like she has such a stronger confidence to her
Yeah.
out, like straight up out the go
Like
versus
even
Poppy,
when
it's like
things
a build up.
even when things were rough between Poppy and Sarah and Nyctos, like, and they weren't like in that place before, she would say, "Nah, it's just because I'm attracted to you." Like, she wasn't afraid to speak her mind about her attractions.
Yeah, which I respect. That couldn't be me, but like I
Nope.
respect her. Um, and Vestas is in stasis because Nyctos like didn't give any forks about what he did. Yeah, we don't need to talk about her. Um, but Vestas is the primal of the rights of ascensions and not just mortal ones. If any primal could sense a godling or a god when they were near their ascension, it would be the true primal of life and her. But she hasn't been able to sense even a godling nearing the end of their calling since Colas took my father's embers, something she's been vocally annoyed about over the years. Which is interesting how that's an interesting thought though. I understand the whole true primal vibe, but if you're literally the primal of ascensions, I feel like that should supersede the embers. In my head, like you literally nullified a whole ass primal. I mean, I understand the
um,
balance of it all, but like,
I think it's because he didn't have like he took the embers, but he didn't have like all the true embers, and so he didn't have the ability to even do the ascensions and to um do all that. So because there was no embers for the ascensions, she couldn't feel the ascensions.
yeah, I guess that makes sense. But like, bleh. Anyway, we don't like Vestas. It doesn't matter. And
Oh no,
Loki.
she was annoyed. So sad.
Yeah, I then they make a comment about how Vestas cares about Nyctos and Nyctos is like in her own twisted way, or so she claims, and like mood. I think this goes back to another illustration of like a fucked up caring, like is bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's I mean, maybe in your own way you care, but like
They're
no,
like,
thank
I
you.
love you, so I'm protecting you, but everything's the wrong way of doing that.
Yeah, I don't. Anyway, and then there's a delicate charge of energy dancing between his flesh to Sarah's flesh as he touched her arm.
Mm.
I don't know if we love mysterious charges. That sounds a little sussy.
I was just enjoying the flesh to flesh
Oh,
description.
don't ever say flesh to flesh ever again.
Listen, you said flesh twice, and I was just like, I'm uncomfortable, but hey, flesh.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that word anymore. Um, and then they have a really cute moment. Um, hello? I'm like, uh,
Trying to talk
in
and do
term
this at the same time.
honestly, multitasking is not my finest hour. Anyway, Sarah's just like, I don't want to leave Reaver or Whisk waking him up by moving. Are you gonna stay here? And Nyctos is like, as long as you are, I will. And she's like, you don't have to do that. And he's like, I know, but I'm gonna be here. You just rest. And I'm like, okay, queen. Um, and I don't know why, in what world she thought to ask this. But Sarah's like, "Do you care for her?" And he laughs and he's like, "I pity her. I loathe her. That's all I feel for her." And she asks, "What do you feel for me?" And he says, "I feel too many things, curiosity and excitement that remind me of what I think yearning must feel like, need, want. Amusement at times, sometimes even anger, but always awe. I'm always in awe of you. I could keep going, but most of all, what I feel is the closest to peace I've ever experienced." Which I guess
See,
is
love.
another, that's what I was gonna say. I think that that is this book's version of love. Like, I think
Mhm.
peace, I don't, can you sense peace? I guess you can. I don't know. I think peace
Nectus says he
is
can. Because
yeah, I
Nectus would
think
tell her he sends peace in Ash.
that has to be like the real version of love in this book.
Yeah, because I think he expects love to be like that crazy obsession. In fact, like he expects it to be what how Colas acts. Like he's obsessed. And it's more like a ownership type thing versus where it's really like I just feel at home. I feel comfortable. I feel
That
like
makes
I'm where I'm
sense.
supposed to be, kind of thing.
That does make sense. And then we're prepping for the coronation. She's fidgeting because, well, it's Sarah. Bella's keeping her company while she's getting her dress fitted, but she's not helping with the keeping still part. Especially when she tells Sarah about these weird venomous spider things that are the size of dogs. No, thank you. Um,
Yeah.
and then
Bella's
they're
just doing
talking
a great job.
about she's honestly everyone, the person we need in our lives. Um, they're talking about nerves, and Belle's like, it's not every day that someone is crowned the consort of the primal god of death before a massive crowd made up of gods and primals. And then Sarah's like, I hope you drop that dagger and it ends up in your eye. And Belle's like, in the entirety of Leith, when I saw Hector earlier, he said that much of the council house was already bursting with people. You know, I'm kind of glad I have to remain behind. That is way too many people. And honestly, that is a big mood. I have crowd anxiety, so
Yep.
I love that. And then here's a really important part. The gown wasn't white or transparent, but a warm silver shade, close to the rare color of Nyctos's eyes when he was amused or relaxed. The sleeves were a delicate lace pattern that resembled the scroll work I often saw on Nyctos's and his guards' tunics. Not white, because we all
Not
know that we
white.
hate the color white.
Mm-hmm.
From there, layers of soft gossamer and chiffon had been painstakingly stitched together so the skirt fell in wispy layers to the floor. Tiny diamonds twinkled from my arms, breasts, the waist, and the skirt. The gown was starlight. Huh. Poor.
Pretty.
And then Sarah's asking if Erlina, the one who's helping her with her dress, is going to be attending, and she said, luckily, coronations are much like the rites. All the mortals and godlings in attendance will be masked. Um, and Sarah, to no shock at all, is strapping her dagger to her thigh, as she usually does. And then she asks for Rain, to tell her, like, what he sacrificed for her, kind of thing. And the truth finally comes out about Vessis and Nyctos and the sacrifice he's made to literally his sacrifice, period.
Yep.
And we find out that she learned of the consort, but nothing else involving the Embers or Satoria. Um, Nah, essentially, oh god, let me see if I can paraphrase. None of us, so Rain's like explaining everything to her, and he was everything to her, and he says none of us even knew about it until another discovered it a few years back. How the fuck if I know? The deals are only known to those who forged the deal in their array because those nosy bastards have to know just about everything. She only learned of the deal, not everything Ethos did on the side, but learning about you was all she needed. And by she, we mean Vestas. She found out a couple years back, threatened to tell Colas that Nyctos had a consort in the mortal realm, something she knew Colas would be very intrigued by. And by intrigued, I mean Colas would have taken you from the mortal realm and used you to get to Nyctos. And lucky for you, I guess Vestas' obsession with Nyctos is greater than her loyalty to Colas.
Gross.
Nyctos was able to bargain with her and got her to stay quiet for a price. Then he agreed to service her needs with his blood to feed her whenever she desired. Sarah has this moment where the box she'd closed all the emotions away and shattered, and she couldn't speak around the storm of them exploding through her. Disbelief and horror seized her, much like they had when Colas had demanded his price, but this was ugly in an entirely different way. I took another step back as if I could distance myself, but I couldn't. There was no distancing to be done. He'd sacrificed the right to deny someone. I suddenly thought about how shocked they had all been after learning that Nyctos didn't react when I touched him, how they said he didn't like to be touched, and when he wanted no one but me. Wanted. No one can tell me that doesn't have something to do with her coming at you, because once you become his consort, you'll no longer be a secret to protect. And then she comes to the realization, shocker, that the embers didn't matter. Niktos hadn't been protecting them, not a week ago, not months ago, or even years ago. He had been protecting me.
Weird. It's like, we knew that.
Yeah, honestly.
Poor
And
Niktos.
then the chapter ends with Sarah saying, "I'm gonna kill her," and Rain's like, "You can't kill a primal Sarah," and she's like, "Watch me try, bitch."
Watch me try. That's a dangerous thing.
True.
Yeah, so she's wanting to go kill, she wants to go kill her right now. She's like, I'm gonna go take care of it. And she's like, you can't do that. She's a primal and you have a coordination. And she basically says, I can try. It's called multitasking.
I
Steph,
love her.
you need to work on your multitasking. She can get married and kill a bitch and you're having trouble typing.
Shut up.
I love you. But Rain, he's doing a really good job trying to rein her in.
Yeah,
And
I
he
see what you
tells
did
her,
there.
he says, "Do you really think Nykthos will let what she did to you in Reaver slide? He won't. That bitch's days are numbered. She's not long for this realm. The moment Nykthos has those embers in him and ascends, that's it for her." And it's like, that better be. I just realized that I misspelled numbered though.
I was letting it go. I wasn't judging
Uh-huh.
you for your.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
uh-huh. And she's still like wanting to go rip her heart out, and he says, Nykthos is waiting for you, your highness. And she's like, don't call me that. And he's like, but you'll be my queen. Like, what are you talking about? You already have been. I think
Aw,
that's
how
sweet coming
sweet.
from Rain, because he was so sweet to her when he first met her. And then when the truth came out, he was very cold towards her. And now, like, that's softening up again. And I just think that. And she even says, like, that she was unsure how to process him saying that to her, of all people. Oh, that's so sweet. But we learned that Rain, Nectis, and Ector are the only ones who know. Um, oh, Ector's still alive at this point. See, I got
Yeah, I
so
know.
mixed up on where we were at the
I
beginning.
well, that's fine. I knew that spoiler alert, that's coming. That's fine.
Yeah, and she's kind of upset. She's saying she didn't want him to have to do that for her or anyone, and he says he understands that. Um, and then he was like, I couldn't figure out what happened between you to change, but now I understand it was her.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he wouldn't want you to know his shame, and she said that's not his shame, it's hers. And he says,
Retweet.
you right, he says, you and I know that, but would either of us feel like that if we were in that position?
That's
And
also true.
honestly, yeah. Like, it's like, it's easy when you're on the outside to be like, you have nothing to be ashamed of, but then when you think about you in that position, you're like, oh no, I would have done the exact same shit. Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I scrolled way too far down. But yeah. So they're finally calming down. They're going out. People are asking, "Did you feel the place shaking?" Um, and they're like, "No, not at all. Weird."
Not sus at
Everyone's
all.
yeah. But everyone's like super starstruck by her, looking like a star. um, Seon and Rahar say she looks like Starlight, and then when they go down to the carriage, even Ector is like, whoa, look at her. And she's like, wait a minute, if you guys are here with me, who's with Nykthos? And they're like, Nectis and the entirety of the Shadowlands army. She's like, oh, okay.
NBD.
No big deal, we're good. um oh no, this is an important part I missed. Before they went out there, this is what starts her spiral before the coronation. When she's talking with Rain, he asks her, do you love him? And she's kind of like, and he kind of tilts his head at her and says, I think I was wrong about you.
Mm.
And so now she's going through the spiral. She's thinking, my heart, I love him. I love Niktos, question mark. And she's like, this could be the byproduct of stress, of everything. Maybe only indigestion. And then she's like, indigestion? Sure. And, you know, that's true. We can blame everything on indigestion. It's fine. But I hate these carriages. I'm sorry. These carriages are windowless. I could not do that. I could not be in a windowless carriage. Mm-mm. Nope. And then Hector's checking on her and he realizes she's looking a little pale. And she says, I think I might need to vomit. And he gets in with her to talk with her about what's going on. And he's kind of like, he's talking about his sister and how she was nervous before her wedding, but he's like, oh, but that's different because that was a love match and this is not. And then finally he's like, what is it? Did something happen? Are you worried something will happen? And then she like blurts like word vomits and says, I want to be Nyctos's concert. I want it more than I think I've ever wanted anything. Well, I likely want the rot to end more and for Colas to be dealt with, and I also want to murder Vessus slowly and very painfully. So there were other things I wanted just as much as her, but I want this.
Mm.
And
Oh.
and he's in shock and he's like, that makes you nervous? And she nodded. And then Rahar says, is everything okay in there? And Hector has this big smile and he says, yeah, I really think it is. And it's just like, oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our beautiful girl Eos with her, telling her she looks beautiful and asking her if she has any questions before they go in. And she says, have you ever been in love? And Eos says she has, and that the feeling of it is hard to explain, and that it's not the same for everyone. But to me, it felt like being home, even in an unfamiliar place. And she's
Peace.
like, yeah, right? There's that feeling we're talking about. And she's like, ah, shit. And then she says, and it feels like you're being seen for the first time, like you're being heard. I know that probably doesn't make sense, but it's like being known in a way you haven't felt before. And she says, I believe it's just something you just know because you would do anything for them, anything, and you can't fake or force that. And and then she literally goes, fuck me. And Eos is confused and they're like, it's fine. This is fine. Everything's fine. And they walk in there and she sees him and she says, I knew right then as I stood there trembling who he was to me. He wasn't Nyctos. He never had been. He was Ash. And I was in love with him. And this
That's
is where
true,
she
girl.
starts referring to him as Ash instead of Nyctos. And it's a little bit of whiplash trying to talk about him because then you're like, do I call him Ash? Do I call him Nyctos? Who do we call him? I'll just call him Daddy. It's fine.
Rooney. Oh, we went two
No,
different directions there. Never mind.
Marooney?
Is that not a thing? Is that a Florida thing? Who are you gonna call?
Must be.
It's like Ghostbusters, but Rooney. It's car. Never mind. Please
Yeah, it's a
continue.
Florida thing.
Please continue. Oh.
Marooney. Okay. I don't know what the hell Marooney is, but here we go. Anyway, she's like, everything stopped, my heart, my lungs, my steps, the air in the chamber, the entire realm. And she's freaking out, and then he comes up to her and he tells her, breathe, Liesa. And she's like,
Or
something
don't.
beautiful, something powerful. And she took in a deep breath. And he's asking her if that's better. She says yes, and he says, I want to tell you that you look beautiful, but beautiful doesn't adequately capture what I see. I don't know if there are words that does. You have taken my breath with yours.
Same. You
But
do that every time you speak.
if she wasn't already feeling that love, man, that sentence right there, like, would have done it. Would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's noticing his crown. She says that it's the color of midnight, the row of swords carved from smooth stone surrounding the middle spike that had been shaped into a crescent moon. The tip of each sword
Just
the
a tip.
entirety of the moon glittered with diamonds. Speaking of which, if any of you want to see the images of these crowns, you can look at them in Visions of Flesh and... I don't have that book. What's the name of it? Visions of Flesh and Fire?
Flesh and Blood.
Flesh and Blood. Okay. Listen, Flesh and Fire, Blood and Ash. I never know which combination she's gonna use.
And that is why I don't say the name of the next book, because I get it confused and mix it up with the last book that she's also writing in tandem. Well, she already finished the other one, but now she's
Flesh and Blood, not Blood and Ash. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Anyway,
Okay.
continue.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. We love you. But yeah, there are pictures in there. Anyways, she's saying it looks heavy, and I love how she's like going from worrying about being in love to him to now like, are they heavy? Like, what's going on? He's getting updates on how the security is going, and he's worried because she's not acting like herself, and he's like, are you all right? And she's, of course. And then she's like, please don't read my emotions. And he's like, that's the nicest way you've ever asked me of that. And then she looks at him and says, I just want you to know that I want this. I mean, when I told you before that I wanted to be your consort, that still holds true. I want this Ash.
I love them so much.
I know. And he's like staring at her in shock because, I mean, this is the first time she's called him Ash since like they've left the mortal realm. I feel like the first time, or since the secret came out. And he looks shocked and dazed, and she's like, I just thought I'd let you know. Should we do this? And he is like, yeah, yes, we should. And then then they start to move forward, and he looks at her and says, 36. She says, what? He said, 36 freckles. I counted them again. It becomes a habit. And I may have lied about not knowing how many were along your back. I do. 12. And it says, a smile spread across my face as I looked at him. The rightness felt as if it were inked into my skin, feeling my veins and carving itself into my bone and muscle, and it felt good. Not confusing, still scary as hell, but good. And then they go up onto the dais, and Rain tells everyone to bow for the Asher, the one who is blessed, the guardians of souls, and the primal of God and common men and endings, the ruler of the Shadowlands, the primal of death.
Please note, it doesn't say true primal of death. It just says primal of death.
It does. It just says the primal of death. And then she's freaking out in the next chapter because there's like 1,000 people staring at her. Mood, I would too. I used to have to give like talks in church growing up when I went to church, and stand in front of like a whole bunch of people, and I cannot imagine doing it to 1,000 people. So she doesn't even have to say anything. So fun times. Glad I'm not there anymore. Glad I don't do that. And he's reminding her to breathe as they're doing this, and then they bring out her crown, or she sees her crown, and she says she never saw anything like it before. Spires carved from Shadowstone formed a halo of glittering crescent moons. Delicate chains of black stone hung between the peaks, dripping clusters of diamonds along tiers of chains, which also connected to the front of each spire. And this is why I'm glad she did that kind of like guidebook with the pictures, because I have a hard time imagining this stuff right here. Like
it's great for when you want a tattoo.
It is. It is great, yes. And she said that Ash angled his body towards hers and stopped so the podium and thrones are directly behind us. And he says, look at me, it's only us. And he's just so sweet. I love him. And then he lifts the crown, and then he lowers himself to one knee, bowing to her. So, and he's a primal bowing to a mortal. And it says, a rush of shock murmurs went through the crowd, situated in the tiered levels of the city hall, as I stared down at him in confusion. He hadn't mentioned that any sort of kneeling was supposed to occur. Based on the response from those watching, I didn't get the impression that this was normal. I also didn't understand why he, a primal, was the one bowing. And then you hear Addie's in the crowd saying, "Now that's a man who knows his place," and we love him.
I love him.
Love him so much. Oh, I love that man. And he tells her that she has to bend to make it work, and she bends over, gets the crown on her head. And she says she didn't feel the weight only because she was sure her entire body had gone numb. And then she says, then Ash took my hand and I straightened as he rose, his gaze flickering over my face and where the diamond chains rested against my forehead. Exquisite, he murmured before turning to each of us. He stood before the throne and faced the crowd. And he says, rise, rise for the one who is born of blood and ash, the light and the fire and the brightest moon. What a title. Freaking love it. And one who's born of blood and ash, the light and the fire and the brightest moon. Oh, sorry, I just really love that title so much. Also, shout out to my husband for getting me Dutch Bros. Anyways, rise for the consort of the Shada lands, and he lifted their he lifted their joined hands, and she gasped at the sudden intense series of tingles erupting along the palm, pressed to ashes. My gaze swung toward joined hands as silvery white light swirled around our palms and down our arms as the embers in my chest hummed fiercely in response. The glow of the ether reflected off of Ash's face as his eyes widened slightly. The crowd went silent. We got an imprint, baby.
Oh.
He says imprint. I'm not gonna say what he says.
Thank
But
goodness.
he translated it to imprint. It must be the array. They've given their blessing. And everyone, all the primals are like open mouth and stunned and silent. And there was one though who gave them a small smile and pressed a free hand of jewels to the center of her chest before nodding. But then they take a step back and Nectus flies down to where they are because, you know, Nectus is amazing. And she says she looked at Ash, my husband. And a series of luminous golden swirls swept over the top of her hand between her thumb and pointer finger, sweeping in several whirls along the lines of my palm. I looked at Ash's hand. He bore the same marks that I did. And then when it's just them kind of sitting at the dais, he explains to her what an imprint is and that he doesn't actually think it's the array. He just had to say something to make sense of why it appeared because one hasn't happened in a while. No one's been blessed upon their union for centuries, and it was something his father used to do when he favored a blessing. And she's like, oh, it was the embers. Do-do-do. And they're talking about it, and she says, so what happens if we continue to no longer continue this union? What if I decide I'm sick of your ass and get out of here? And he says he doesn't I know. He says he's not sure. None who've borne the imprint chose to separate, and I think that's like here's your sign, girl. Like,
you're stuck.
You're stuck, yeah. You ain't gonna want to do it. And she's looking around at the crowd. I love the fact that it's them on the dais, on their seats.
Die. It's a die. For the love of cheese, it's called a die.
I like saying dais better. It sounds
okay.
better. I hate
that's wrong,
die.
But that's okay.
Is it really die?
Yes. Anyway, continue.
I feel like I want to look that up now. They're on this die. I wonder what number it's on. 6, 4, 5? Anyways. And Nectus is just there, like over them, and that's why like no one's approaching them, and I think it's so funny. But she's noticing all the different primals that are there. She sees Maya, the primal of goddess, love, beauty, and fertility, who in Flesh and Fire, that is not who is over that. Or at least not named over that. And they give a description of her. She sees Thanos, but it would be hard to miss him in a crowd because he's taller than all other primals, possibly even Ash, which is kind of terrifying because Ash is like 7 feet tall. But she sees Empress and Keela, the primal of Rebirth, who had helped Ethos capturing Satoria's soul. And then he starts to tell her more about Keela and what she does, because she's like, do you think she knows? And then he tells her, did you know that when a babe dies, their soul is reborn? They're the only souls that do not pass into the Shadowlands. Keela captures them and sends them back. But it's not really reincarnation, because a baby who dies after their first breath is taken hasn't truly lived. They have no past or present to relive. Keela gives them a rebirth, a chance to truly live. And he says, she can see the soul of all those she captured. My father once said she sees them as her children and then often follows them through their lives. And she's like, she captured her soul. And he says, I do not know if she still I don't know if she could still follow that soul since it wasn't a rebirth, but it is possible. Colas thought it was, but she never told him who carried Satoria's soul. If she had, Colas wouldn't still be looking for her. And he's like, oh, she's trying to be good. And she's like, oh, it sounds like she is good. And then she sees Penelope, who we love, and that reminds her of the title. And he said there's a little bit in there of the prophecy, not enough to raise alarms. And he says, the only thing that kept coming to my mind, your hair, moonlight. And you do look like the brightest moon tonight. And she asked about the blood and ash part, and he says that it's a drake. It's something the Draken like to say. Strength of the blood and bravery of the ash is the one of strength of the blood and bravery of the ash is one of them. Some believe it symbolizes balance and represents life and death. It just all seemed fitting for you. And I agree with her. It's a beautiful title. And then Addis comes up and congratulates them and is being, well, Addis. Making jokes about having to go visit a lake now and saying that they should all sit down and speak. And then he gives them their farewell, and Sarah's projecting satisfaction. And he's like, what did that jackass say to make you feel that? And she's like, it's not the only time I felt it. He's like, I know. You felt it when you stabbed me in Stonehill.
Mood.
As you do whenever you hold a weapon to me or manage to nick my skin or hair. I could continue. She's like, that's not necessary. But then she explains that she's feeling satisfied at being included in the important discussions. And she was surprised by that. And it goes back to how she felt when she was in Lysania. She felt like a ghost. And she said, like, I was there, but no one actually saw me, interacted with me. It's the only way I can describe it. And being included makes me feel seen, accepted. And then she's like, anyways, changing the subject. Do you know what he wants to speak about? And it's like the possibilities are endless. And then he's still thinking about, he's still thinking about what she said. And he says, I hate that you spent so long being made to feel that way, and I loathe that I likely added to that feeling. For that, I do not think I could apologize enough. You are seen and heard, Liesa, and you matter, always.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. But then Keela comes up, and she does something that Sarah's never seen anyone do, and she goes up to Nectus and greets him, and he nudges her arm, and she ends up placing her hand against his cheek, stroking the scaled flesh. And she's like, whoa, I never seen anyone do that. But she goes up and greets them and says that she was happy to see an imprint and that was beautiful. And then she goes and touches her, and they feel that charge of energy that they can't explain. But Keela doesn't react to it, so she's not sure if she's the only one who felt it. And she's saying she's glad she saw it. And just how she's looking at her, she's starting to think that Keela does know who she is. But she looks at Ash and says, "The title you bestowed on your consort is beautiful. Perhaps even another blessing. May I ask what inspired it?" And he's like, "Oh, her hair. That's all." And she says, "May your union be a blessing." And then before she leaves, she gives them an old knowing smile. And then she looks at Ash and says, "Your father would have been so proud of you."
We love a proud dad moment.
You do. Proud dead daddy.
Then we go into chapter 42, and it starts off with everyone cheering for Sarah, like they are approving and love her already. I think it's really important to note that like she's immortal, so she provides such representation for like the quote unquote underdog, the
The
not
minority.
minority. That's the word I was looking for. And it's and
The
Ash
mortals
is
there are like the bottom of the food chain.
correct. And then Ash is helping her through this day, like just kind of grounding her and making sure she's all right throughout the evening. And he's loving her. They're having some beautiful conversations. But he is really enjoying that she's calling him Ash again. And then they're talking about Keela and how she essentially suspects that like she does know about her, and they kind of go back and forth about if she can be trusted. Honestly, like I think her intuition's pretty spot on with those she thinks she can trust and those she can't trust, as we'll learn later.
Right. And I think it's evident in how she treats the souls too. Like she's protected them so long from Colas that like I think if there's anyone you can trust, it's her.
Honestly. So then they talk about oh snap, crackle and pop. So Hannon. I want to say it's Hannon, but like maybe it's not. It is what it is.
We're probably saying it wrong, and that's okay.
Something like that. We don't like them, fun fact, in this situation. I think they are easily swayed and easily just jackasses, to be honest with you. Scion talks to calls Sarah your highness, Sis. Well, so talking to both of them. And Sion's like, or Sarah's like, "You're really gonna start with that?" And Sion's like, "It's not for your benefit." And I'm just like, all right, mood. And then she's like, the fact that he's a primal and she's not, everyone's more worried about Sarah than they are about Nyktos. And I'm just like, that's a bit sexist, bro. And well, it is what it is.
Yeah, but she's squishy. He's not.
She's squishy for now. Dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun.
well, exactly, which is why they're protecting her right now.
Dun dun dun. And then they're talking about how her calling him Ash and if he's okay with that. And he's like, "I missed it when you didn't." And then they're talking about being naked, and that's not shocking. And then they're talking about sex, and that's not shocking.
What?
And then we're having a whole discussion about carriages again because Ash is super tall. Like, how do they all fit in these carriages? I have no idea.
I really need to see it.
And the chapter goes on, and Rain takes their crowns to the chamber near the throne room. And
you don't want to cover what happens in the carriage?
No, I don't actually. I don't. This is the thing. They're having this conversation about love, and like he mentions that the taste reminds him of chocolate and strawberries, which is something that we learn or that we notice in From Blood and Ash. And Sarah's heart cracks a little, he didn't know what he tasted because he didn't know what love tasted like or felt like. Neither did I, not until I realized what I'd been feeling. But Ash, it was different for him because his cardia had been removed. Love was never something welcomed or wanted. And I think so he can taste it, but he can't. I think that concept is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But he tastes it, but it's like I taste it, but I've never tasted it before, so I don't know what it. Or maybe he has around other people, but he's just never like paid attention to it or realized what was going
Yeah.
on.
And then she brings up how she knows about Vessis, and
Oof.
Ash is like, "Did she tell you?" And she just is like, "Thank you." And Ash is like, "Don't thank me. Don't apologize." Like he's just
Shattering glass in his hand.
yeah, he's having a hard time. And he was like, "Is this why you call me Ash now?" And she was like, "No, I told you I wanted to be your consort before." And he said, "But that changed." And she's like, "It did because I didn't know everything when it came to her, and I don't want to say the wrong thing." And he's like, "You won't." And she's like, "I just did." And what you did to protect me isn't why I feel that way. I wanted to be more to you than a consort and title only before I learned about that. What it did was help me understand a bit of what I saw. We don't need to talk about it if you don't want to, but know that if you don't kill her, I will find a way to do it myself. And honestly, mood.
Mood.
Um, he was like, I didn't want you or anyone to know what kind of control she had, what kind of complication she is. Um, Addie's knows she feeds from me, but he doesn't know why. Only a few do, but we were never together. She fed from me. Sometimes she made it pleasurable, other times it burned like the abyss. And if I disagreed with where she wanted to feed from, it was almost always the latter in terms of how she did it. I actually preferred when it was that way. It was far better than the alternative. Getting any sort of pleasure from her was and is the last thing I want, but the only thing of mine she has ever had in her is my blood. I see what he did there.
It
Um,
was subtle. It was subtle.
yeah, but and then she comes to this conclusion that Vessis didn't want her. She still doesn't want him. She wants Collis, and she always has. And this is a weird dynamic because I'm not sure, like it's a means to an end, but like I Vessis is it's giving. Oh wait, have we gotten to this yet? Never mind. I don't think I can say what I was about to say, but it's just giving like kind of reminds me of like is bitch in a way in terms of like trying to bring about it's like the twisted convoluted bring about a better world kind of thing, but like
Right.
not. I don't know. I don't like it. And then the chapter ends with him saying I wish, and he doesn't finish his sentence. Whatever Ash had been about to say was lost as he tipped my head back and brought his mouth to mine. He kissed me until the ugliness of Vestas faded into the background, until any concern or worries of what we would find in Ireland went away, and until there was no space for anything but the feel of his lips against mine. Then there was nothing more than his arms around me, holding me holding him. Nothing but this moment, us. It was all that mattered. And like, that's kind of tragic, really, because it's like, you know what he's going to say.
Yeah, you know what he's wishing.
Correct. But he actually says it, I think by the end of this book. But chapter 43, she awakes sometime later to to the feel of Ash's body through the linen shirt I'd borrowed after he'd patiently undone every single tiny button on the coronation gown. Wink, wink. Um, and this is a pivotal moment because he's in the bed, like they wake up together. Like he's
Yep.
not
He's not already
he
out
did
of the bed and waits for her to wake up and
correct.
comes back.
Yeah, it's very coupley, if I may say so myself.
So domestic.
And he's hungry, so
And he's feeling some sort of things.
correct. And then she calls him Ash, and it's not helping. And he needs to feed, and she's like, I'm your consort now, and I want to be of aid to you if you will allow it. And he then feeds. And then they're feeding extracurricular
Just some
activities.
morning sex, guys. It's just some good old morning sex. Like,
Anyway,
we're for
and
it.
then he again goes with the I wish, and then he never finishes what he says or what he wishes for. And Ash and her shadow stepped into Messine, a village not too far from the capital of Ireland, the following afternoon. And Sarah's like, that was quick. And he was like, it was. And Sarah's like, I'm guessing it wasn't supposed to feel that quick to me. And he said, we traveled even farther than the last time, and between realms, it should have knocked you out. And she sighs and she's like, the embers, I know they're getting stronger. And like, rip,
Time is limited, besties.
honestly. Um, and Sarah's like, so what are we gonna do? Walk straight up to the manor entrance and demand to be taken to the princess? And he was like, sounds like a good enough plan to me. And she's like, really? And he goes, plus there's some level of amusement to be had when mortals realize they're in the presence of a primal. Uh, and they're like talking about anxiety, and she's like, what does anxiety taste like? And he says, too heavy cream. And he's like, what does it feel like to you? And she's like, well, like it tastes to you, like something too thick to swallow, suffocating, uncomfortable. I looked down at our intertwined fingers. The golden imprint along the top of his hand shimmered in the soft, dappled sunlight. It's this constant feeling that something bad is about to go down, even when nothing is happening. And when there's a chance that things can go bad, it becomes the only thing that can happen. I know that probably makes no sense, but it's like crushing weight on your chest, and it's always there, even when you get used to it and don't really feel it. It's still there, just waiting. And I don't know, that's how it feels. And
Yep.
honestly, that is such a great description of what anxiety is like. Like if you could think of like what if you had to put a description on anxiety, I think that that's a really good because I feel like if you say like you're like buried alive in a coffin underground, like I feel like
Mhm.
that's just suffocating. It's not like a conscious suffocating, if that makes any
Right.
sense.
No,
I
I
don't know.
think I feel like out of all the descriptions I've seen of it, this is one of the better ones. For the taste of it, how it tastes to him, like that too thick cream, but also for how she explains it of like that crushing weight on your chest is always there. You just kind of have to figure out how to move on with it there. And I was
Mm-hmm.
literally sitting here listening. I was like, "Yep, it's there. I can feel it. Like, it's always there." So no,
Yeah.
it's a really good description.
Yeah, and then they are trying to go into Ireland and the guards are just being dumb and being like, "Yeah, you're not a
Yeah,
primal, you're just a bitch." Um and
I'm
Nick
the
just
king
is
of
like,
Ireland.
"I'm the Asher, the one who is blessed, the guardian of souls, the primal god of common men and endings, the ruler of the Shadowlands. I am Nyktos and the primal of death. This is my consort." And they're like, "Yeah, okay." And
Cool.
then they drop to their knees like dominoes and apologize to them. And I hate her. Anyway,
Uh-huh.
they're there to speak with Princess Kaylee. So then they're being taken to her, and she's surprised. She's like, my gods, is that you, Seraphina? And she's like, am I in trouble? And they're like, no, where's Delphi? And then they talk about how he's in the library. Um, and they finally get to Delphi, and he's like, I've been waiting for 3 long years. Listen, Delphi, it's better late than never.
They're here now. That's all that matters. Okay?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Exactly.
So they meet Delphi and they're like, oh, is that so? And he's like, is. I was beginning to grow a little impatient. Thankfully, Culture Manor is a lovely place, as is the Balfour family. Their name will be honored long after the Great Kingdom falls.
Freaking the interference, bro. Anyway, I'm gonna drink
Yep,
my Alani.
yep, yep. He says, it is a name, fate's willing. You may one day know. Yeah, that one day's coming up next month. No, not next month. Dang it, that's not the right book. I'm sorry. She's been teasing the other book. So I keep thinking that's the one coming out and it's not.
Okay.
Okay.
Continue.
Okay. But the Belfour family name is an interesting one, as are their ancestors. One comes to mind, an oracle, the last one to be born. And this is why I feel like Ian knows stuff he does, is because they have oracles in their line. But that's just me. Anyways, they're like, we're not here to discuss their family, and he's like, yeah, I know why you're here. Um, you want to know like about what the array told you and the possibilities and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he says one of them foresaw some of what was to come, but none of them had enough foresight to see that what they created could be used to bring about what they sought to prevent. A false king, fate even fucks with the fates. I love that. Fate
Very
even fucks with
astute.
the fates. And
Very
and they
astute.
asked, what did they create? And he says, a conduit powerful enough to briefly store and transfer embers, both volatile and unpredictable in their raw, unsheltered state. They had to go, they had to go deep within the Undying Hills to find such a thing. And they're saying they know where those are. And he says, until the array conjured forth the heart of the mountains, a precious stone created by the flames of dragons that used to inhabit this realm eons ago before primals could shed joyous tears. It was the first of its kind, known for not only the indestructible strength, but also of its irregular, jagged beauty and silver sheen. They called it the diamond. They called the diamond the star. And they're like, oh, we haven't heard of that. Um, and Sarah's asking Sarah questions, saying, why did it cause the mountains to be called the Undying Hills? And he's like, aren't there more important questions? And she's like, yeah, but I'm curious, so let's figure it out. And he says they got their name because only the most tolerant of plants and creatures can survive the mountains, which have long barren stretches of land providing little food or shelter. No mortal would survive long in those conditions. And the array had to erupt half the mountain to find the diamond. The heated rock and gas irrevocably changed the landscape. And she's like, oh yeah, that would do it. And so the array got the conduit, and he wanted to know how it's used, and he says it's for many purposes, but for their intent, it's a rather simple process. Either a primal or an array would be needed to use it, only they have the kind of essence needed for such transfer. Then contact between either the primal and the embers are currently in and the god they are to be transferred to, or in case of how it was used, held by both primals, the star would transfer the embers. And they're like, that's all? And well, yeah, the array are known for being simplistic, even if they're vague about it. And they're wondering why Colas knows about this if it's not supposed to be known about it. And like, aren't the arrays supposed to be neutral and not interfere? And that sounds
Good
like
joke.
interference. I know, right? Right. They don't interfere, never. He says the array often walk a fine line of guidance and interference, don't they? Holland. Um, when the primals began to feel emotions, so did the array, and that's why some of them remain neutral, but some probably didn't, because emotions apparently are very corrupting. He says, I have no knowledge of which one gave Colas what he wanted, nor the true reason behind doing so. It could have been a nefarious act, or they simply fell prey to what they feared would happen to primals if they could love. It is possible their emotions exploited, forcing them into such an act to protect someone they loved. And she said maybe love is a weakness. And he says, I believe it to be one thing more unpredictable than even a primal ember. Therefore, stronger, which go back. Love makes anything possible, makes anyone capable of the unexpected. Cute tongue. So I think that's going back to our conversation about the cardia, is that love makes anything possible, anyone capable of the unexpected. So you can remove whatever you want, but love's gonna get you in the end, man.
Love conquers all, as one would say.
But then they realize that, hey, we could get this diamond, but joke's on you, Colas has it. He knows how to use it too. So he wouldn't want anyone to access it. And but he tells him you don't need the star in order to remove the embers. And that she's just a mortal vessel for it. And Ash gets mad, saying no, she's not. And he's like, okay, my bad. That's not what I meant to say. And then he says they would just need to be taken from you, and doing so will mean only a rather minor impact on the realms. And then he looks at Ash and says, you'll become what you were once meant to be after your father entered Arcadia, the true primal of life, the king of gods. And he says it's a simple process, one that could have occurred any time before the ascension, and just says you need to feed from her. And she's like, he has, like, that's already happened. And he stopped smiling and he said he must feed until the last drop of blood is taken, until there's nothing but embers left. Then they will transfer to him. He will ascend, but you will not survive. You will die.
Shocker. It's like we heard that before.
Here we go back to Hope being torn away, going back to what she thinks her destiny is, and that's just to die. Yeah, and Ash is like, no, you're wrong. And he says you can successfully remove the embers. Any primal could, because she is, whether or not your father intended, a placeholder for them. The realms are lucky. No one has learned of their existence in her, but she cannot survive such an act. And she remembers Holland saying, death always finds you, by the hands of a god or a misinformed mortal, by Colas himself, and even by death. Ash. And then she starts laughing because, the nerves.
Mood.
Yep. And Ash is not having it. He is super pissed. He's like, but my father survived. And he says, your father was born a god, destined to ascend into his primal hood just as you. The embers belonged to you, but they were hidden in her bloodline. They didn't belong to her. All it took was one drop of primal blood for them to grow stronger, and it made it impossible for anyone to remove the embers. They have merged with her. Even if you had attempted to do this, the moment you became aware of both embers being inside her, the end result would have still been the same. It would be like cutting out her heart. There are only three options here. Either you become the true primal of life and restore balance to the realms, someone else, another primal, takes them, and I don't think any of us want that, or she completes her ascension, and you already ensured that. And then she's like, no, we're not gonna remind him of what he did. Like, we're not doing that. And he apologizes, and Ash is having none of it. He's like, he's up there choking this man, saying that he needs to give a better answer, and he says perhaps he'll become more creative in his answers once he spends time in the abyss. And she says, no, this isn't gonna change the answer. And she calls him Ash, and he looks at her, and she says, this isn't his fault, Ash. You're hurting him, and he doesn't deserve this. You don't deserve another mark. Let him go, please. And then he does, and Delphi is in shock. He's like, I should be dead. I've seen my death. It comes by your hands. You were supposed to kill me. I've been waiting for this. This is how I was supposed to die. And he says, well, you're not dead thanks to her, so you should, congratulations. And he says, it may be cause for celebration. Perhaps there is a silver beast and the brightest moon. Two, not one. Two, then one. Talking in the way people who know shit do.
Fates do.
Yeah. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? And he smiles and says, nothing but hope. So he knows he's being vague like people are, but
he's seeing a new thread.
Yep, he's seeing a new thread. He's like, wait, no, because if you think about it, Ash before wouldn't have cared. He would have just killed him and been done with it. But something's changed in him that someone was able to stop him. And
the seed has been planted.
Right? It's growing. But they're traveling back. They're leaving Cauldron Manor and traveling back. They didn't say goodbye to Kaylee because they couldn't linger. And they were making their, yeah, I don't know how many times I'm going to say they're making their way back. Making my way downtown, walking fast. Anyways, she says the devastation of all the what ifs that would not happen, the knowledge that the end was truly coming this time, and the utter collapse of hope. It was rather freeing. A calmness settled over me. After all, death had been my constant companion, an old friend that I always knew deep down would visit one day. Okay, do you know what that makes me think of? That passage? It's what when Castilla's pretending to be Hawk says to Poppy that like death is an old friend that's always going to come visit kind of thing, whether you want him to or not.
No, I thought that was a poem. Honestly, it reminded me of Charmed, but that's besides the point.
Oh,
I know.
you're gonna depress me. Okay.
We're already depressed.
Rest
Anyway.
in peace. Anyways, um, and she's wanting him to stop. She wants to talk, and he's like, "No, we don't need to talk. We need to get back." And she's like, "You have to do it." And he's like, "There's nothing I have to do." And she said, "That's bullshit, and you know it. You knew how." And she's basically saying, "You knew how to remove the embers this way, didn't you?" And he didn't say anything. And he's like, "I didn't know for sure. There's not been anyone like you, immortal primal embers. But I figured that draining you completely was a possibility. But we know he wasn't gonna do that.
Correct.
But he knew that wasn't how Colas took him, so he knew there had to be another way and was hoping there was another way. And there is, it's just Colas has that other way. But she's saying, look, we came here to learn and we did, so now we know. And he's basically being like, there has to be another way, maybe the star. And she's like, no, Colas has it. Do you know where he keeps it? No one could. Like there's just it's too risky to try to get it. The embers have merged with me. Removing them will kill me either way, and I don't want to die. And he's like, glad to hear you finally feel that way. And she says, I want a future. I want to live. I want to experience a life where I have control of my future. I want us, but I need a future where we defeat Colas and the rot goes away, where those in Elysium and in the mortal realms are safe. That's so important. The only thing that matters. And I think this is an important shift for her, because before it was, I'm gonna die, so I don't care kind
I
of
don't
thing.
value my life kind of vibe.
Yeah. But now it's I know I want to live and that I deserve to live, but I know what the greater good is kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like my life is not worth the life of everyone else kind of thing.
Ugh.
And he's like, no, it's not the only damn thing that matters. You, not the God's damn embers, not the fucking realms. You matter. Ugh, love Morley Graveman. And she says, there's no other way. I understand that, and that's not your fault. And he's telling her to stop, and she says, it's not. This isn't right or fair, but you know what you have to do, Ash. And he's like, do not call me that when you speak of me ending your life so casually. And he's just panicking. He is not doing good. He is, oh, I feel so bad for him.
No, I feel bad at the end of the chapter. That's where I feel bad.
Me too. Yeah. And she apologizes, and he can't believe she's saying she's sorry, and he can even feel it, her sympathy, anguish for him. And he says, you've done nothing wrong. And she says, neither have you. And he says, how the fuck can you even say that? Because there was another option. I could have saved you. Oh, my heart breaks in this moment for him, thinking about the fact that if he had not done that, he could love her the way he knew he was supposed to be. And she's like, because she says, there's no guarantee you would have loved me. He said, yes, there is. I would have loved you if I could have. There would have been no stopping me. And I just want to cry so much when I read that part. And she says, his declaration was as powerful as one of love, and it shook me, rattled me until the embers began to hum and throb, until I tasted the ether gathering in the back of my throat. The corners of my eyes started to brighten. Part of me thinks he could have ascended her right there and everything would have been fine. And she told him to kiss him, and he did. She said it was gentle and tentative, full of reverence and sorrow. A soul-torn groan rumbled from Ash's chest. The embers continued to hum. Their heart ached. And then, they wild, passionate moment and in their grief kind of thing. But then later he finally says, I wish I'd never had my cardia removed. I never wanted to love, not until you, Liesa. And then they continue. They're just kind of there in silence, like soaking each other up. And then she asks him to make a promise, and he says, "Anything, Liesa." And she says, "When it comes time, can you take me to my lake? I want it to be done there." And he says he promises.
And then unfortunately we go into the last chapters of this book. Ash holds her tightly, as if he feared I might slip away. I could feel his heart pounding against my cheek as he prepared to bring us back to the Shadowlands. And so they return, and he's like, something's wrong. There's death everywhere. And then he goes, fuck. They were under attack. I wish we could forget this whole chapter existed and just go along our merry way. Anyway, Ash is asking for an update on Vessus, and she's still in stasis in her cell, but there are Dakai at the Rise here, and in Lathe, Belle, and Rahar down there. And Devon showed up and is starting to piss people off. It is what it is. And then they're like, who the fuck is here kind of vibe. And it was Kin. He came before the Dakai looking for you, for both of you, surprised the guards, surprised all of us. There was nothing we can do. He's a primal. Then there was a lot of death, and oh no, I don't want to be in chapter this chapter.
Have fun. I'm so glad I had to write up this chapter for the notes, so you have fun. You have fun.
And then he's like, you don't want to see this. And Sarah is like, I saw them on pikes drilled into the ground, hands and arms bound, their mangled skin and torn open chests empty of their hearts, throats slashed to the bone. Others were cut so deeply that their heads were no longer on their shoulders but the ground. Fair hair, sharp, bloodless features, lifeless, dull amber eyes. That was his head. Ector. I hate it here. I hate it here. I staggered. Anyway, Belle doesn't know. So lots of death and lots of bleeding.
No. You gotta say who else is here dead.
They don't say it technically.
Okay,
but we know
they
who
say
it is.
without saying. Color of
It's
wine,
Eos.
ma'am.
It's Eos, and Belle doesn't know. And anyway, they go into beast mode, and Sarah is trying to heal everyone, and she's fighting with them, and yeah, so then either pulses and then explodes in a blast of pure power, causing both Scion and me to scoot back on our knees. I lost my hold on Ios as the wave rippled out of the courtyard and moved beyond the Rise, beyond the Shadowlands. A brighter, more distinct bolt of lightning streaked across the sky. Then it stopped, the wind, the shaking. I scrambled back to Ios' side, peeling back the torn collar of her gown. A thick pink line encircled her throat. The skin was bruised over her heart, but it healed. And Sion's like, Ios. And she's like, Sion? And then she's like, Sarah. And she's like, hi. And they're like,
voice
hi.
get deep like that too? Sarah.
Yes.
Man, death really changed you, Ios.
But then it doesn't stop there. Like, the Dakai are attacking them, and she just wants to save all of her friends. And every time she uses the ether, it's like drawing the Dakai closer. And she was just like, I just want to bring Ector back. And Sion's like, no. And she's like, fuck off, let me go. I just want to save him. And Sion's like, there's no time. She's like, I can bring it back, I just need. And Sion's like, no, you do that and they'll swamp you and you'll die. And she was like, I'm gonna die anyway.
I'm glad for Sion, honestly, for being the logical one. Even I hate it because I wanted Ector back, but there ain't no way they were gonna survive her standing there trying to bring Ector back.
I know. Sion shouted, and Sarah screamed in fury and anguish as she bent quickly, swiping up the fallen Shadowstone sword instead of going for her dagger. A Dakai veered past Scion, past the guards, now in the courtyard, then another and another. I whirled, horror knocking the wind out of me as they went for the power, the ether, Ector. She screams, no! Launching across the slippery ground and driving the sword into the Dakai, into any part of them I could, as they swarmed Ector's body in a nightmare of claws and teeth. I lost all sense of skill. I simply hacked away at the beasts. What a fucking mood.
Yep.
Shut her so much. A scream of rage, of ruin, tore from me as the corners of my vision turned white, pure white. All across the courtyard, the Dakai reared, jerking their heads toward me, and the power inside me built and swelled until nothing could hold it back. I didn't even try, as the other sword shattered in my hand. A pulse of power rolled out from me, leaving me dizzy as it swept into a wave of Dakai, knocking them away from Scion and Rain and into the air, where they simply vanished, were obliterated. And now Homegirl has used way too much ether, so she's exhausted. And Rain's like, Sarah, are you alright? And she's like, I don't know. I think so. And Sion's like, we need to get inside. And there was no path for them. The Dakai surrounded them. And then Ash shows up with his primal Misty. And he's all like, run. And they're all
I think this is very important though, because when he tells her to run, he didn't say it out loud.
No, it was like a mind-to-mind meld.
Yeah, and that's the first time she's ever heard him speak in her mind.
Which is funny because Poppy and Cass can walk in each other's dreams.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking about the fact that Poppy can
Talk
speak
to the
Wolven mind to mind when they're in their Wolven form, but what makes it so they can speak?
I was thinking it was a mixture of wombo combo because they're the OGs.
I'm sorry, were you actually speaking because nothing came through?
Yeah, I said the wombo combo because they're the OGs.
Oh,
that's you.
that was me. Why did that get turned down? Okay, yeah.
Anyway,
maybe.
Since they're the originals, like that was like, I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know. Anyways, continue. Continue the destruction that is happening.
Yeah, the Cimmerian are still there. The kitten is still there. She couldn't see anything. She froze. She was taking shallow, too short breaths. She was trying to calm herself down. She's like honestly, she's having a panic attack.
Mood.
And I don't blame her. All she sees is golden hair and golden paint only feet away from her. The tiny hairs along the nape of her neck rose. A wave of awareness tiptoed down my spine. My stomach hollowed as I firmed my grip on my sword. Tension settled in my shoulders as I heard Ash shouting my name, drawing closer and closer until the sound of hooves drowned him. Hooves? Whatever.
Hooves.
Our armies had arrived, but someone else was close. A hunter. I felt into my bones, and I was the prey, instinct seizing me. And it was Attis. And he goes, you shouldn't thank me yet. And she goes, why? And he says, because this is the only way. And he apologizes. And Attis goes, all we want is you. Remove the charm, and no more blood will be shed this day. No more lives will be lost. And he says, refuse, and my brother will leave none but the primal standing. And he says, it's your choice, and you should make it quickly. And she goes, I will leave. He says, you made the right choice. He was wrong because there was no choice to be made. There never had been.
Ugh.
Then she gets knocked out.
Making that choice while hearing like Ash like yell
screaming
her name,
for you.
call it for her. This
next go into the last chapter. And she dreams of her lake. And then she sees a wolf, more silver than white, in the splintering streams of moonlight. I thought I'd seen that wolf before, not in a dream, but many years ago when I walked these woods as a child, but that thought floated away as I drifted through the water, to where the white wolf once sat, and now Ash stood. The air I breathed as I lay on something decadently soft carried the scent of vanilla and lilac. Stale lilac, might I add.
What?
I was no longer on the ship, and I feared I knew exactly where I was. She has a metal band around her neck with a long chain leading to a wall, and she was out for 2 whole days. She's inside a gilded cage, like Ios talked about, where he keeps all of his pets.
His
Pets, same thing.
Yeah, basically.
And then guess who fucking shows his bitch ass face in this book. The audacity.
I want to talk about him.
Golden hair, golden mask, pale blue eyes lit by the faintest wisps of ether. Eyes I had believed belonged to a god, but Dices had the same eyes, and he was something else entirely. A revenant. Callum.
Listen, I
Tired
think
of
you
him.
can tell by the note I put that I don't want to talk about him because he's
Anyway,
in both series he's an ass. Anyways, continue.
correct. I mean, he doesn't change his stripes. Anyway, she asks, was the attack stopped? And he's like, Ates gave you his vow. Kin's forces pulled back. And she's like, I remember you. Um, and she was no longer wearing her pants or even her shirt and vest. She wore a golden sheath of nearly sheer gossamer fabric. And Callum's like, you were covered in filth and the stank of the Shadowlands and the primal there. And I was like, the only stench I carry on me is that of this place. And he was like, I would warn you not to let His Majesty hear you say that. And she's like, fuck His Majesty. And honestly, mood.
Mm-hmm.
And then we learn that Callum talked to Sarah's mother often, which is how they got the information on how to kill a primal. And essentially everything Ash sacrificed had been for nothing. And Sarah's like, why let me be taken into the Shadowlands? Why let it get to this point? People died and he could have taken me at any time. Why wait? And Callum's like, blood, ash, blood and ash. And she stiffens to the point where the shackle around her neck threatened to cut her throat. Colas, at the very second I realized I hadn't thought of what I'd been groomed to do since birth, what Holland had prepared me for, not once since waking up. Become his weakness, make him fall in love, end him. Colas, not Ash, and here I was with him, yet fulfilling my duty was the furthest thing from my mind as I fought the urge to take several steps back from the false king. And then Colas shows his face and he's like, you do not kneel. And she's like, no, I do not. And they talk about the prophecy and he was like, the god Delphi had mentioned the last oracle too, an oracle born of the Balfour bloodline. What were the chances that it was a coincidence that Delphi had mentioned the oracle? None. And Collis goes, Penelope didn't receive a complete vision. And
Of
she
course not.
tenses. So then we get this full thing. From the desperation of golden crowns and born of mortal flesh, a great primal power rises as the heir to the lands and seas, to the skies and all the realms, a shadow in the ember, a light in the flame, to become a fire in the flesh. When the stars fall from the night, the great mountains crumble into the seas, and old bones raise their swords beside the gods. The false one will be stripped from glory until two, born of the same misdeeds, born of the same great and primal power in the mortal realm. A first daughter with blood full of fire, fated for the once promised king, and the second daughter with blood full of ash and ice, the other half of the future king. Together they will remake the realms as they usher in the end. It's like we heard that before. And so it will begin with the last chosen blood spilled. The great conspirator, birthed from the flesh and fire of the primals, will awaken as the harbinger and bringer of death and destruction to the lands gifted by the gods. Beware, if the end will come from the west to destroy the east and lay waste to all which lies between. It is like we fucking heard all of that before.
But, as you know, there always has to be more. It's never freaking over.
No, and Sarah's really unsettled that Colas knew that Penelope had spoken to them about the prophecy. And she's like not surprised about the prophecy. She was like, it's clear to her who the false one is, the great conspirator. And Colas is like, your attitude amuses me. But it is not that amused. He's confounded by the two-daughter part. But he believes it's Mycella. She was, after all, promised to the once king, my brother. The second daughter, you are promised to the future king, or who would have been the future king, once Ethos entered Arcadia and Nyctos ascended to take his place. 3 parts, the beginning, the middle, and there is the end. For the one born of the blood and the ash, the bearer of 2 crowns, the bringer of life to mortal god and Draken, a silver beast with blood seeping from its jaws of fire, bathed in the flames of the brightest moon to ever be birthed, will become one. Um, um, who, who do we think that's about?
Weird.
Honestly, really weird. Um,
I mean, this makes you think of what Delphi said: the silver beast, the brightest moon, one,
yeah,
two, two, then one.
yeah, his little gibberish.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah comes to realize that that's why he waited for her to be crowned. And then she needed to restore the dragon's life. And he was like, I needed to make sure the embers had reached the point of power. And she asks if there's more to the prophecy. And he says, and the great power will stumble and fall, some all at once, and they will fall through the fires into a void of nothing. Those left standing will tremble as they kneel, will weaken as they become small, as they become forgotten. For finally the primal rises, the giver of blood and the bringer of bone. Wait! The primal of blood and ash. Wait!
Yeah.
They will weaken. Hold on. As they become small and they become forgotten. That literally just tells us what happens. I did not just, I just put that together. And this is my second read through. Are you serious? That is why everyone forgets her. Those left standing will tremble as they kneel, will weaken as they become small, as they become forgotten. Her whole history is forgotten. I mean, maybe. We'll see.
I mean, they do rectify a lot of it, but this part is the part that I'm like, ugh. But for finally the primal rises, the giver of blood and the bringer of bone, the primal of blood and ash. We know who that is.
Well, yes. A primal of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes on to say there will be no need for mortal kings. There will be no need for any other primal, not when a primal of life and death has risen. And to no one's shock, he wants to kill all the primals because he doesn't want competition because he's a stupid piece of shit.
Yep.
Um, and she's like, why would you need more power? And he's like, what a silly fucking question. One only a mortal would ask. Besides the fact that if I do nothing, I die, power isn't infinite or limitless. Another can always rise. Power can always be taken, leaving you weakened and incapable of protecting yourself or those you care for. And she's like, as if you care for anyone but yourself. As if you know a thing about me that hasn't been told to you, Seraphina. You think I'm the villain? You think I'm the only villain in this tale? That the other primals deserve to continue when they did nothing to help me when my brother ruled as king? Not one of them. That the mortals who carry wealth and prestige are innocent, worthy of life despite their many wars and lack of empathy for their brethren. You think I'm the only one who seeks absolute power? If so, then you're not as clever as I thought you were. And whatever, he's a bitch. Every mortal wants it. Every mortal wants it. Every god, every primal, even ethos. Why do you think he was setting up his son to become? What do you think he was setting up his son to become by putting his embers of life into a mortal promised to him as a consort? A silver beast with blood seeping from its jaws of fire, bathed in the flames of the brightest moon to ever be birthed, will become one. Emphasis on the will become one part. Ethos put those embers in you so his son could take them, something Nyktos would have done the moment he knew he was ready, if he'd been aware of what it meant. He wanted Nyktos to be the primal, the silver beast, to not only overthrow me and end me, but because Ethos knew his days were numbered, after all, the ancients dreamt of just such a powerful being as the primal of blood and ash. This is fucking wild, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Ethos always hated me. So does everyone else. Go fuck yourself. Um, and essentially, he will have what he wants, what he thinks he deserves, because, whatever. Um, Colas is like, you kept the embers safe, you dared to use them, you made sure they were ready for me. Words can never do justice to the gratitude I feel, but thank you. Disgusting. I don't want your fucking thanks. Stupid piece of shit. Um, and then he starts to drain her and to tank the embers. I would be the first to burn, and then the rest of the realms would follow. I was dying. Heat poured into my chest as the embers began to flare faintly, weakly, but the heat building and building. And that presence seized me again. That awareness, that voice, the voices. No, 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 no. And she's like, you're killing me again after all these years. because it was Satoria's voice, and he like jerks up and he's like, "What?" And she's like, "It's me, Satoria." And he's like, "Liar. It's not a lie. Ethos had her soul. And he placed it with the embers to be born again in me. I'm her." And he's like, "There's no way. Clever lie, though." And then Atis is like, "Your Majesty, a moment, please." And he's like, "Are you fucking serious, bro?" And Kilo shows up. And Atis is like, "Could it be that you finally found her?" And Callum's like, "This is a trick. Don't trust her." And Atis is like, "I know how to kill you, you shit. Speak of me again like that, and I'll prove it." And Atis is like, "Think about it, Colas. Your brother was very clever. He could have taken Satoria's soul and placed it with the embers to protect her and fuck you over. You know he would." And Colas shudders. His arms loosened and I started to fall. I shriveled at the feel of him, shrank inside myself at the sight of the horror etched onto the false king's features as he realized who he held in his arms, as he realized who he'd have to kill again. Colas shook. He rocked as my gaze drifted to the open doors and the shadowy leaves swaying in the balmy breeze. To a wolf crouched at the trunks of the trees, a wolf more silver than white, a silver beast, bathed in the brightest moonlight. Ash.
And that's where it fucking ends.
Of course, that's where it fucking ends. Bitch.
It's a crazy ride. We did want to put in this note that Jennifer put in. I thought it was very important. But she says that Sarah is a creation of my imagination, but her thoughts, her feelings, and her actions regarding what she admitted at the pool of Divinash are something very real. These are complicated emotions and actions I've experienced myself. Because of this, I know they may strike a certain chord in readers. Not all of us have a sage, ancient Draken, letting us know that they're here for us when we need someone. But if you had the same thoughts as Sarah, as I have, there are people waiting for you when you're ready to talk. And then she gives different resources for people that are struggling, and she says you are not alone.
Preach, sister girl. Preach.
Love it.
Love it and list it. Love these books. But we're gonna take a week break, and then we'll be back August. No, we'll be back July 31st. I forgot how many days are in July. With episode 7.
A soul of
Not
blood and
even
ash.
Yeah, not even sure how many parts that shit's gonna be, but like A Soul of Blood and Ash is our next drop on July 31st. And that'll lead up to us getting Born of Blood and Ash August 13th. So we'll, round out this story, which is really exciting.
I have a feeling that one's going to be a lot of parts because I have a feeling we're going to have a lot to say about.
Oh,
the
and
new
that's the
book.
first read. And
Yeah.
oh my god, I don't even know. I don't even know how to handle it. But all bookish things. Sippin N Bitchin on Instagram, Sippin N Bitchin on TikTok. Share with your
YouTube.
friends, loved ones, anyone. It's
Book
your
obsessed.
fish. Anyone who has a social media, go with it. And then we'll catch you on the next one, bitches. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.